It is a pleasure and a privilege to be here, my dear Renee, to be talking to you for the Pure Land series, which seeks to enrich life through creativity, spirituality, and self-expression. I'm sure that you are all as excited as I am to hear what Renee Fleming has to say. And it is wonderful to see that you all came despite the fact that it's going to snow in London tonight.
Already started, I think, yes.
Renee, you are one of the greatest and most beloved soprano in the world. I had been an admirer of yours for many years. I first saw you in your outstanding performance as Don Anna in Don Giovanni in Salzburg in 2000. I have followed your remarkable career ever since. And last month, I have the privilege to see you perform Marschallin in the Rosenkavalier at the Royal Opera House. How many of you saw her? Well, I can see.
Still one more.
You have refused to be bound by convention. I have read that you were told when you were starting out that if you wanted to succeed, you had to sing the standard Italian composers like Verdi, Bellini, Donizetti, and Rossini, their bel canto repertoire. But you defied expectations and made a career singing Strauss, Mozart, Handel. You are considered the Strauss soprano of our time. So now I'd like to know, when did you decide that you wanted to perform Mozart and Strauss rather than the bel canto repertoire?
Well, we all have our trajectory, and it's really based, first of all, Excellencies, and thank you, all of our esteemed guests, for coming tonight. We're very humbled that you really, honestly, braved the weather. I find that every young singer figures out their repertoire based on their actual instrument, and my instrument lent itself early on very well to Mozart. And Mozart is one of my voice teachers, so one of my mentors, because the repertoire is so challenging and so hard. It requires a perfection and a clarity, style, and it's quite exposed. You can't sort of hide in a large orchestration. So that was important, and 12 years of Mozart, and then I said enough, and I moved to Strauss, on to Richard Strauss. And then I branched out for a long time into Slavic repertoire. Rusalka obviously was a huge part for me. A lot of French, and new music, American repertoire as well. So I've had a huge, even Tatiana, and I'd say at the heart of my love and my passion were about 10 roles that I continue to do.
Your great versatility is astonishing. You are an American soprano who is at ease singing in English, German, French, Russian, and Czech. You blaze a trail by rediscovering roles such as Dvorak, Rusalka, and Massenet, Thais. You have redefined the expectation of an opera singer.
I've just always wanted to be all things to all people. I just thought that was my job in life. And it's literally, to have my hand in every single pot. It's just part of it is intellectual curiosity, both in terms of life and all of my interests, and also musical curiosity. To be a musician means to always want to be learning new things, for me. I grew up in a musical household. We all sang all the time. I thought that was normal.
You have been a pioneer in merging classical with other genres of music. For instance, your recording with the Royal Stockholm Philharmonic features Anders Hillborg, the Strand settings composed for you, as well as work by Samuel Barber and Björk. You have been called the voice of America. You were the first classical artist to sing the US national anthem at a Super Bowl. When did you decide to break down the boundaries between classical and popular music?
So I grew up listening to a great amount of different kinds of music in different styles. I actually played guitar and wrote songs, and so it was natural for me to want to sing different things. What I rebelled against was the pressure to conform to a very European model of what an opera singer is and does, and how she behaves and how she speaks. It was a very intercontinental type of language, and it was quite grand. You developed a persona. You weren't even particularly real in an interview. And in my generation, we rejected that and said, no, we're just like everyone else, and we're normal people, we just happen to sing. I'm not sure that's completely served us. There was some benefit to kind of being on the pedestal. But that's definitely the way it is now. And I see this with my young colleagues in Rosenkavalier too. They're a fabulous, down-to-earth bunch trying to lead a life. They just happen to have this rather unusual gift and talent. So when I first recorded outside the genre, I think it was either Haunted Heart, which was jazz, or it was the music theater recording with Bryn Terfel, Sir Terfel. And that was considered a huge risk. I mean, people were very skeptical about whether I should do that or not. And so I really have paved the way for this type of exploration. And obviously, people before would go on television and sing. It was almost always People. The song People, do you remember that song? Every opera singer got on television and sang that song for some reason when I was a child. Yeah, exactly. And I remember thinking, this isn't really working, because they sang it, People, as an opera singer, and it didn't. So the challenge for me was to find a vocal language that was a better fit for different styles. And I've become a maniac about other genre and understanding what the voice does and how it functions and how do people do that. And one of my daughters is also, she's constantly sending me things. Listen to this, and can you believe she can sing that riff? And all of that virtuosic pop singing and pop styling is the same as what we do in bel canto or Handel. And it's improvised, and you base it on certain things that you can do technically. So I just think it's fascinating.
Some might say that you have reached the pinnacle of the opera world. You have won 4 Grammys. You were awarded the National Medal of Arts by President Barack Obama, the French Légion d'honneur, and Germany's Cross of the Order of Merit, among many other accolades. Richard Fairman writes in the Financial Times, if Fleming did not sing at an event, it's not worth an entry in the history.
It's funny about that, because we do get still asked to do certain events, and it used to be a way, and our culture is quite different from yours here. It used to be a way of bringing people together because a classically trained singer had some sort of authority, some sort of cultural authority, I would say. And so every major event was marked usually by somebody who would get up and sing something, and typically it was something that everyone knew. And that has shifted dramatically in the last 10 years, I would say. So I think that will cease to be the case, unfortunately. But for me, as a personal journey, it's been fascinating to be able to sing in palaces and to sing and be seated with princes and kings and heads of state, and to sing at the White House for 50 heads of state and spend the night there. I've had the most extraordinary experiences. And this is, I come from upstate New York. This is the time when you have to pinch yourself and say the hard work pays off, the dedication pays off, and we are allowed to have sometimes a certain kind of entree.
Well, perhaps I can't help but ask you, because I read that you were so excited and overwhelmed when you sang for the inauguration of Barack Obama. And I know that you are very concerned about the future, politics, human rights, women's rights, and would like to know if perhaps you can tell her how you feel now that President Barack Obama is about to end his 8 years and that America will have a new president.
Well, singing for that particular inaugural celebration 8 years ago was, there was a spirit at that event. You know, it was very cold, and there were, I mean, thousands and thousands of people standing in the cold to witness this. I was actually at the time singing in Baden-Baden and rehearsing, and I asked to be released to go do this, and they said, yes, we will release you. If it was anybody else other than Barack Obama, we would not release you. So the whole world was excited about this, you know, this extraordinary thing that happened. I mean, I would have wanted to feel the same way about a woman being elected president. When I was a little girl, that was my dream, was to be First Lady President. So you can see where the ambition comes from, right?
Renee?
It's not too late, which is sad, though. That's sad. And it's no you know, it's no secret that I supported Hillary Clinton. I sang on her fight song that was an internet, went viral on the internet. So I am concerned. I'm concerned, you know, for a lot of reasons. You know, we elect our officials because we expect them to serve us and to have our best interests at heart. And certain things that have changed in our country have really changed that dialogue. I mean, for one, it's the fact that districts and gerrymandering have created a situation now, politically speaking, where both sides have to appeal to the extremes. And secondly, we have a voice in talk radio and television that has now created an incredible amount of conflict. You know, I grew up getting all my information basically from the same place as everyone else. And we trusted it, and even if there was spin, you felt that by and large you knew what was going on. And today, I just I find the whole landscape chaotic and a bit terrifying, because we really don't know what to believe anymore. And that has been actively pursued as a strategy, this idea. So I'm terribly concerned. I mean, obviously we in the arts have a very small niche in the world at large, but thank goodness we have the arts. I mean, if nothing else, the arts speak to humanity, they speak to history, they speak to our better selves, they enlighten us. And I mean, I'm going to continue to try and draw people into this world.
I am concerned as well, and I lose a lot of sleep about it. And for those who follow me on Twitter, they know that this is a thought that is really worrying me every single day. There have been inaccurate reports that you are retiring, as you have stopped accepting engagements for the standard mainstream roles that you have already performed many times over the years. Can you tell us, what are your plans for the future? I know that in March 2016, you were appointed artistic advisor at the John F. Kennedy Center in Washington. Could you tell us as well what you want to achieve with that role?
Thank you, Bianca. So first of all, yes, that I am not retiring. I am stepping away from repeating the repertoire that I've always sung on the operatic stage, but not in the concert hall. And I'm looking for that part of inspiration, whether it's new work or whether it's a role that I didn't think of. But you know, at a certain point, I'm just not a big repeater. I don't like to do the same thing over and over again. And at the end of this season with Rosenkavalier, I will have sung something between 60 and 70 performances. And that's enough, you know. If I lose, I sort of think, oh gosh, not again, then what's the audience going to experience, right? So, you know, I'm absolutely open-minded to still doing things on the operatic stage. As I said to the artistic director at the Royal Opera last night, I said, I just ran out of ideas for new repertoire. And he said, no, we'll keep looking, we'll keep looking. So, and I do love new music. I think the most exciting, first of all, there's a lot of hope in music right now. in the US at least, and I think here too, I understand, there are small companies producing new works at an unbelievable rate. It's a new audience, it's a younger audience, and people are really interested in it because the work is relevant, it's of today, it mixes languages, the barriers are down. The thing we talked about, how when I started singing there was a box I was supposed to fit into, that's completely gone now. So I think that I feel extremely hopeful about the scene right now, musically speaking.
Can you tell me a little bit about the Center Renee Fleming Voices series? What exactly
so the
is
Kennedy
it?
Center.
Yeah,
All right. So I have
Kennedy
two. I
Center.
actually have two positions. I've been at Lyric Opera of Chicago now for 6 years, and there my job was audience development. It was sort of about imagining, because my theory was that if you wait and simply present great opera on stage, you are preaching to the converted. You know, people who are coming already love opera. So how do you get new people interested? So we did Second City Guide to the Opera. Second City is the probably biggest brand outside of sports that leaves the city of Chicago. It's a comedy troupe. And they came in, absorbed the culture of opera, and then gave it back to us in a very funny form. Completely sold out. People never had so much fun, and it spawned an entire cottage industry for Second City. And this happened because my husband and I, on an off night in Chicago, decided to go. And I put my bag down on the table, and there was beer everywhere, on the floor, everything. So I just sort of like lifted up my skirt, and I thought, "That's okay, this is fine. This is going to be fun." And halfway through, I heard my voice. And this wasn't a mainstream recording. This was a Handel aria, an obscure Handel aria that they had on the speaker. And somebody was carrying someone and having them fly through the air. And I elbowed my husband and I said, "That's me. I can't believe they're using one of my recordings." So I found the little music director in the corner, and we went over to him, and he tried to escape, thinking it was going to be copyright infringement. He was in trouble. I said, no, come back. That was really good. Would you work with us? Would you work with the opera and create something? And he did a phenomenal job. So they now have done it for orchestra, for the ring cycle. They have a whole arts side to what they produce now. So that was just, you're looking for opportunities, sometimes they come to you. And now we also perform musicals every year. And I curated the opera Bel Canto, which will be on television all over the US next week on the 11th, and the star was Danielle Denise, who is a big star here. So these kinds of things, to my way of thinking, bring in new people. And Voices at the Kennedy Center is curating a recital series from all different genres. So we have a Broadway star, we have a jazz great, we have a Brazilian singer, and of course we have classical. And I hope that people will come, expand their tastes, expand their interests, and be open-minded.
I heard that you were doing something that was based on the story of something that happened in Peru.
Yes, that's Bel Canto, yes.
Oh, that is Bel Canto.
So, yes, so Bel Canto was a book by my friend Ann Patchett, and she won the Orange Prize here. She's a wonderful author. And it's based on the Peruvian hostage crisis of the early 90s. So it took a long time for the film rights to be acted upon, but they are right now. They're making a film now, and I am the voice of Roxanne. And the actress is Julianne Moore. So that's out there, I can say that.
And are you curating it?
No, the film is separate, but the opera I curated. So, and all that means is that as the artist, as a sort of consultant to the opera, is I looked for a composer. I brought a short list to Sir Andrew Davis, and then Jimmy Lopez, who's a phenomenal Peruvian composer trained in Helsinki, and then studied it in Los Angeles or in San Francisco. So, and the Pulitzer Prize winning playwright Nilo Cruz wrote the libretto, and we created a new work that I think is really stunning. I think they did an amazing job.
And do you think we will see it in London?
I would think that would be phenomenal.
Yes.
I think it's, people, it was, first of all, it was the top selling show of last season. Secondly, 600 to 700 people stayed, and operas are long, as you know, stayed at the end to talk about it. They were so riled up by the themes. And I think it really had resonance. So I hope it gets produced. I think once the telecast is out, which is next week, it will be picked up.
You and I share a commitment to gender equality and women's empowerment. In 2008, you became the first woman in the 125 years history of the Metropolitan Opera to headline the opening night gala solo. You sang 3 acts from 3 different operas, each with different cast and conductor, and each in a new costume. You performed last year at the UN on International Women's Day. Do you think that women still have more to prove than men in opera and in the arts? Or do you feel we are getting there?
Well, I felt very shielded in opera as a woman. I just thought, what's an opera without the soprano? I mean, why bother? Why would you even go? So I just thought I'm in the one completely non-sexist job, right? So it's equal opportunity. That said, obviously, the characters that I play are often two-dimensional. They're often the victims in the operas, and they're certainly the subjects of the rage and the vengeance and all of that. So, but still, as a performer, I felt like I really had an equal job. But then I noticed something, which is that in the press, I felt that we were unfairly criticized. Very often for appearance, very often for things that, it would just suddenly I would say, no one would ever say that about Placido Domingo. And I'm talking about me, because I don't read my own reviews anymore. People read them for me and tell me in very general terms, give me the general gist. It's better so I don't obsess over one word. But I've seen it when I read about other things. And it's nothing against critics, because they're doing their job. It's in our consciousness that we still judge women in a different way. And certainly in terms of power, there's no question we have a long way to go.
In every field, in every profession, I think women are judged differently, and there are different sets of standards for men and women, even today.
Yeah, absolutely. When somebody can visit Harvard Business School and tell the women, we really don't want you on Wall Street, just forget about it. That's an issue. And to Harvard's credit, they have addressed this. They have actively are trying to address this. So, but it takes time. Change takes time.
Let's hope that.
Thank you for your work, by the way, Bianca. Thank you, because you have really been an activist on behalf of women and human rights and so many issues that we all care about deeply. So thank you.
Thank you. I share your views on the paramount importance of music and the arts in education. What positive impact do you see in music and the arts on other disciplines in the curriculum of education?
It's twofold, and this is something I'm actively involved in too, because my parents were educators, my siblings are all educators. I got a degree in music education, so I still have something to fall back on. So first of all, it's been proven now that young people stay in school if they're involved in something they enjoy, that is meaningful to them. So they tried getting rid of arts and all extracurricular activities to sort of focus on STEM, and it didn't work. And they've changed. They've come back. Even the city of Chicago, which has this horrendous violence rate that we read about, Rahm Emanuel, when he started, said, I don't care what you cut, do not cut arts. And he will openly say that ballet taught him that he could do anything. So I believe very strongly in that. Secondly, playing an instrument in particular, learning that eye-hand coordination, learning to listen, improves a child's ability to absorb information in school. So my other big project at the Kennedy Center, which is will soon be talked about, is really focusing on health and the arts, the brain and research on music, all of the practitioners and music therapists who have a wonderful effect on Alzheimer's, autism, Parkinson's, pain relief, PTSD, and of course, children and education. So examining all those three areas. Because I really think once people get all of this information, they'll say, wait a minute, we need more music in our lives. So that's sort of the idea.
And in fact, all the reports have shown that the teaching of music and of art really improve education and improve students and
Definitely.
Facilitate other.
Well, I could only learn,
you know?
in a humanities situation. I could only learn when thoughts and ideas were married to beauty or to literature or to other things. Otherwise, my mind was wandering. I was a dreamer. I just wasn't going to pay attention. So I know for myself it was very important. One thing I would love you to help me with, if any of you have ideas, I would like to redefine the meaning of the word art. Because when we say art, many of us mean the classical arts, you know, ballet, orchestras, opera, but in fact, the visual arts, but in fact, art is much broader than that. And the more we can frame it in the broadest possible light, i.e. whatever speaks to you, the better chance we'll have of pushing forward on this argument. Because, you know, when we try to raise money, for instance, in the US, everything is done privately there. And you say, this is an arts organization, so many people in organizations say, oh, we don't do that. Yeah, we don't do art. So I'm struggling to find new language to define what that means. So I welcome your input on that.
There was something very interesting that I read, that you have spoken in the past about the effect of cinema broadcasts could have on live opera performances. How can opera remain vibrant in the digital age?
Well, funny you should ask, because first of all, I think the opera broadcasts are phenomenal. They provide opera to audiences that don't otherwise have access to it, and I'm talking about Gothenburg, Sweden, I'm talking about parts of New Zealand, you know, places where I have gone to sing and people have said, welcomed me with open arms because they know me from the Met HD broadcasts. And they're thrilled to have access to this. And certainly people who even in my country who can't travel to a major city, and they are absorbing it wonderfully. So does it cannibalize audience? I think it probably does right now in the short term, certainly in the metropolitan area of New York City. I've had people tell me themselves, you know, I used to drive into the city, but the parking, you pay for dinner, it's so expensive, and now I just, you know, I live 5 minutes away from the movie theater. But in the long term, I think it's wonderful. Now, we're involved with a new platform called Enwrapped, which is potentially an ecosystem for all of this to live on. And it's a digital streaming platform. In fact, we've been here meeting with friends, and Elizabeth is here, who's the CEO, because we think it's the right thing to do. Because what I've seen with my children, who are young adults, is they live on the digital, mostly the telephone, not even laptops anymore. I tried to give them a CD last week and they said, oh, Mom, we don't do that. We just stream. We only do streaming. I said, oh, you don't even want my CD. So it's changed dramatically, and we're really actively trying to affect change in that world. And if you have any questions, Elizabeth is here. But it's such an exciting potential. Imagine that you could, at home, that people with children who can't, there's this whole area of decades when it's very hard to get to the opera or to get out when you have young children. You can do it at home. And in the long term, there's no question that we must do this. This is not sort of, oh, that's a nice thing, or oh, that's going to be a problem for ticket sales. It has to be digital, or the next generation is just, they're not going to be interested.
You know, because of my, I have a human rights foundation called the Bianca Jagger Human Rights Foundation. And of course, everything I do is related to the work that I am concerned with: human rights, social justice, environmental issues. But on my tweet account, I put music, and I put music of very different genre, including opera, because I feel that for those who follow me, who probably are reluctant and think not opera, I just say, please, just listen to this, and perhaps you will change your mind.
Thank you.
Okay?
Thank you.
You know, and then
Wow.
they get, you know, they tell me, they write back to say whether they liked it or not, because I think just like what you feel, that we need to transcend these concepts of, you know, because of who I was married, people are very surprised that I am a big opera fan and that I love classical music. They imagined that all I could like was rock and roll, which I love, and I love all different kinds of music.
Yeah, me too.
And I love, of course, opera and classical music.
You know, I also think, however, that all of this is to get people into theaters, and because we need a community now. We've, in my country, lost a sense of community. We've lost it in many, many different fronts. Life is so fast. We're talking about our children, your grandchildren, who are interacting in a solitary fashion with screens and not going outside and playing even. So I worry about this change, and I do believe that our arts institutions can be a place where people can come together and find that sense of community. So that's one of the things that I'm constantly encouraging. And I spoke here in December, I said, it's got to be short, it's got to be social, and you got to serve wine. Because then people will come, and they'll be happy to be in a sort of social environment.
Do you think that it is more difficult for new artists entering the industry, or do you think the use of social media compensates and helps them? How do you see that?
Young singers have to understand how to market themselves and promote themselves on the internet. It goes with the territory, and they all do. But you know, we try to support them. So the Ryan Opera Center at Lyric Opera is one of the premier, and the Washington National Opera also. I'm involved with these companies, trying to support these kids, and well, they're young adults, but they're gifted. And part of the strategic plan, I said, we need to help them build their websites. We need to teach them about taxes. We need to really give them practical help for their careers and not just train them to sing well, because many of them leave and then they're lost. They don't know how to get into the sort of the business of real life and, you know, the career and all of that. So Chicago Voices on February 4th is going to have all of these panels that will be about, you can look it up on the internet, Chicago Voices. It's a really big project that we've been doing. And the panels are things like getting started, technology and self-promotion, protest through music. It's a big one. You know, there's a big history in Chicago of that. And these kinds of things to really help young artists from all different walks of life.
You have a multimedia project in development, I heard, based on the letters of Georgia O'Keeffe. Can you tell me about the innovative approaches you're using for this production?
Well, so I premiered just 6 weeks or so ago a 30-minute concert work for orchestra and soprano based on 5 letters of Georgia O'Keeffe. Beautiful. Kevin Putz is an American composer. He won a Pulitzer Prize for his opera Silent Night, and based on the ceasefire, the Christmas ceasefire. And it's a very evocative language, and I said, let's try and develop this, expand it to include the photography. Do you all know who Georgia O'Keeffe is? So to expand to Arthur Stieglitz, the photographer with whom she had a relationship, and create a sort of something we could tour then that would have the images of their life together, of their period together, and her art also. And you know, I grew up seeing Georgia O'Keeffe on cards. So you know, for all I knew, she was a designer of you know, thank you notes. So the more I learn about her as a human being, the more amazed I am. She was the first person in the U.S. who to paint abstract art, and she was a maverick.
Real pioneer.
She was a complete pioneer. She didn't listen to what anyone else said about anything, and thank God for those people.
And tell us a little bit about what lies in store for you. What are your next project? Will we be able to listen to you in London again, in Salzburg?
Well, this album that you all have now is a good example of sort of where my interests are now, because it's this marriage of the old and the new, and then of course the Björk songs are also kind of an experiment because I sing them with my voice. It's full orchestra, and thinking about ways to combine the worlds, the various worlds of music, so that we're more open. And you know, the holy temple of art, the Opera House, in the U.S. has really tremendous challenges because people have said they're afraid to go in. They still, I mean, the largest search, Elizabeth was saying today, is definitely what do we wear? So, and we've been doing this for a long time, so there's still anxiety around this art form, so we're trying to humanize it.
Are you hopeful for the future of opera?
Oh, very. Yeah, very. I mean, it might change, it might evolve, it might not be so big, but there's no question it's not going anywhere. So I think, thank you. Oh my, you did a great job.
Thank you so much.
Beautiful. Isn't she great?